Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today I'm going to be working in Hanna Karlzon's Jewelry Box, and I'm going to be doing the title page, so this page here, right? I am going to base it with Zig Brush Markers, and then I'm going to use either color shifting or just metallic watercolors in general, just the sparklies, right? And we're going to add some pizzazz to the page, okay? So I have pulled out number 80 violet, number 30 blue, number 36 light blue, number 42 turquoise green, number 81 light violet, number 505 yellow ochre, number 706 light orange, number 61 light brown, and number 65 mid brown. Now this might not be all that I use, but it is going to be some. Now I did test this out on the previous page, and I colored this little lion with our Zig markers. I wanted to see if I would get any bleed through, which I did not. And then, of course, we put the shimmer on, right? All right. I'm not entirely sure. I like how he turned out, but I was really trying to really play with the markers more than I was worried about that page. Okay, let's get started. Hello. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, just welcome. Glad to have you here. Today I'm going to kind of narrate a little bit and kind of skip forward here and there. Basically, I've applied the light blue along with the turquoise green, and now I'm adding the blue here. Now, I'm not too worried about blending and things like that, just simply because you can use your colored pencils to smooth those kind of things out. And so I am just kind of laying down maybe what you might call a base layer. Now, personally, once you get all the glitter on here, I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference how smoothly the blend is here because your eye is captivated by all the glitter and shimmer, right? But I thought I would just kind of, throw that out for what it's worth. Now, if you're new to my color alongs, I usually do them in 2 times speed. It's easier to upload. I find that you can still follow along without it being like feeling like a time lapse. And yet, I can narrate it comfortably as well, because in real time, there are long gaps, of silence and such. So basically, I'm just duplicating what I do on one side on the other. And I looked at a reference for peacocks and then just picked out colors that I liked. And, I'm taking some artistic license, I'm sure. Now, the other thing that I want to say is don't go over and over and over, and don't take too long of a time. Bear in mind, this is 2 times speed, so it looks a little faster than in reality, but you don't want to continually work an area with Zig brush markers or they will bleed through. Now, I had no bleed through with this at all. Now, this is that turquoise green, and I'm just kind of going in on the one side, and you can tell, some have more white, some have less. It really doesn't matter, and I don't want you to get too caught up in it. This is a little bit of a freer kind of color along, right? It's a little artistic, so to speak. So we're allowing those colors to blend, and if one of the little prongs is way more purple, that's okay, right? So just really allow yourself to have some fun. This is the regular violet. And then here I'm going in over the top with the light violet. Now, if you want them to blend, do it right away. If you want more of a harsher, that's maybe a bad word, but like more definitive line, then apply your light violet a little later, and that darker line won't blend as much. I hope that makes sense. Personally, these areas are so small, it doesn't make that big of a difference. You can see that there is variance in color there, but it is not wildly, like, you know, your eye isn't like screaming that there are two colors there. Okay? You could also lay down the light violet first, and then put in your dark. It may change the color a little bit, you know, so you'll have to experiment with that. But you can see on the bigger ones where you're getting a little bit more of that light violet. I personally like that a lot, that there's some variance there so that it doesn't look all matchy-matchy, right? Because the reality is flowers and feathers and fur all has variance, right? Now I am trying to keep the purple out of the little loopy thing because I will be going and adding our watercolor to that, right? The metallic shimmer. I am really loving these Zig brush markers. They're so smooth on the paper. They do take a little bit of time to get used to. The brush is very flexible. And so if you're used to working with a harder nib, like a Copic, obviously that's an alcohol marker, but like Ohuhu alcohol markers, Tombows, things of that nature, super tips, it's going to feel much more like a loose paintbrush. So that's something to consider if you're thinking about getting these. I am really, really loving them. And if you saw my December, January completed pages, I use them so much. They very much appeal to my impatient nature, and I find that I don't have the trouble with the bleed through on good paper. Now, you always have to test your paper. I did use them, and I have quite a few examples. If you Google the Zig marker in my playlist and stuff, or in the video. Oh, excuse me. It's Friday morning. A big yawn. Sorry to do that to you. I hope I didn't cause you to yawn. But anyway, there are some videos where I show how to use it on your Amazon paper. And basically, what you got to keep in mind with that is 100% bleed through. There's just no getting around that. That kind of paper just simply cannot not bleed through with these markers. And the paper is much more absorbent. It doesn't lay on the paper like it does Hanna Karlzon's paper. It absorbs into it. So you're going to get much more definitive lines, a lot like you see here on that, the rose that I'm working on right now. I personally don't have a problem with that type of shading, but you're not going to get the smooth, like continuous blends. Even on this paper, you're not. Now, this paper is thick enough to absorb it and not allow it to bleed through, but it's still too absorbent for me to get a blendy, right? So I will show you later on in the video what I do to try and solve that problem. These are the same two colors, and you can see what I'm talking about here with these colors not blending, right? And that's okay. I'm okay with that. It is a stylized look that You either like it or you don't, right? And I think for some pictures, it works better than others. Personally, I find it works great for more cartoonish pictures, which I use in my Grumpy Friends and capybaras, things like that, where your images are a little more whimsical. I find that it can be a really nice, I don't know, like the block style just kind of works, right? Here I'm doing the same thing, only I'm using the blue and the light blue. Now, could you see right there how that blue was wet and I was able to pull that blue down? So that you will never get on your Amazon paper. But I was able to get it here. Now, did that mean it made a nice smooth blend? No. So here I'm going tip to tip with my marker. I'm taking my light blue and I'm touching my dark blue and I'm bringing a little bit more of that blue in. And you can see how it's a much smoother blend to do that because the paper is already wet. So when I go in with that adjusted color, it just blends better, right? So here I'm trying to go in with the light blue, add the dark blue, and then bring it out. And that did seem to smooth it out a little bit better. So I am just kind of playing with different techniques and being like, well, does that work on this paper? Do I like this better? And I did find that that was kind of a better way to do it. Now, am I impatient? Absolutely. Should I be doing these one at a time? Possibly. And here I'm trying the tip to tip and I'm like, oh, look at that nice smooth blend. Much less harsh than the ones to the side. Do you notice that? But it is a little bit of a different look. Now, once again, I'm going to be going over all of these with my watercolor metallics. Sorry, it's Friday. I'm having brain cramps. I know that never happens to you, but it does to me. But anyway, so I am not terribly concerned about big differences in the colors. And I think you'll agree that when you saw the final page, you didn't say, oh, but look at that harsh line right there, right? Now, maybe if you were, deep diving into it, you might. But for the most part, I think we often view our work with a much more critical eye than people that see it, right? A casual observer. Even right now, I'm zoomed in. I've got my nose to the paper, so I am seeing every little splotchy bit, patchy color, stark line, everything, because I am just dived in. Okay, if you heard that weird noise, that was my phone. Apologies. Miss Ellie is going to be having knee surgery. She has a luxating patella. Sorry if you don't care, but she's my baby. And so that was the vet. We're trying to get things scheduled. So here, once again, I'm just basically tapping you can see I just tap that marker right on the other one and pick up a little bit of color. The longer you hold that marker to the other one, the more color you're going to pick up. So keep that in mind. But I am finding that is on this paper a pretty nice way to blend and get a fairly smooth blend. Now, once again, I am not spending tons of time trying to do that because in the end, it's all going to be covered with our metallic watercolors, and we are not going to see any of those stark lines. The color will kind of shine through because a lot of the metallic I'm going to use on that blue is more of it's almost like a pearlescent with a little bit of glitter. It is not the Lischlinka. Oh, good. Now you can see the marker. Hopefully that's helpful to you. I try and do both zoom in so you can see up close what I'm doing on the paper, but then zoom out a little bit so that you can get the full, you know, scope of everything as well. Let me know in the comments, which do you prefer? Do you prefer something like this where you can kind of see everything? Or do you like to be, you know, looking at nostril hairs, so to speak? But yeah. See, this is that awkward time in the video where I've pretty much told you what I'm doing, and now it's just a matter of watching me do it, and what more can I say about it, right? Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm trying a different method where I am coloring off on the palette, and then I decided, I don't know why I colored on the palette right there. Basically, I'm putting down the light blue here, and then on the palette, I am going to use that turquoise green, and I'm going to pick that up with the light blue and blend it that way. And I'm going to test that on these bigger feathers. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. So just ignore my initial lay down of color there. I think it's important that you try all of these techniques, and that's why I'm doing all of these in this video. My goal is to show you all the things, and then you're going to find the one that works best for you. Just like with coloring, some people like to color dark to light. Some people like to color light to dark. Some people like polychromos. Some people like Prisma. It really depends on, you know, what you have and your style of coloring. So if I show you all these different methods, you could use this same method on the other feathers, right? Or you could use, or vice versa. Does that make sense? I hope so. Some days I feel like I just ramble a bit. I have days where I feel like I'm more articulate, like the words flow out of my mouth like water, and other days I feel like I am butting my head against a wall to try and get anything coherent to come out of my mouth. I know you're probably like, yes, Wendy, we know. But luckily, you guys love me and come back, and for that, I am deeply appreciative. Okay, so here you can see I have that turquoise green. I scrub it off onto the palette. Now I'm using the light blue to pick that color up. And what it'll do is it's first going to lay down the color I've picked up off the palette. But then naturally, as that is being used up, the light blue comes in and you get this nice smooth transition. This is a really good way of doing things, especially if you don't have like a between color, right? If you have a dark color and a light color and you're kind of struggling to really get a nice blend, try using this method. It is the same as the tip to tip, though I find that when you pick it up off the palette, you have a little bit more control, especially with with these kind of brushes, these real brushes, because they're a little more flexible. And so when you try and touch your marker to the other marker, the nib isn't solid, so you're not getting quite as consistent of a transition. Whereas doing it this way, you just have a little bit more control over what you pick up, or how much you pick up is maybe a better way to phrase that. But I look at the nice transitions I'm getting here. And then I'm using that same method up on some of those others where I felt like I had a really harsh line. And you can see where I'm able to smooth those out a little bit as well. Right? I think one of the things that I see a lot with people that are new or people that are nervous experimenting is that we give up too soon. We put that paper, we look at our feathers and we say, oh my gosh, that's such a harsh line. The whole page is ruined. Like, I'm gonna start a new page. I'm going to forget this coloring. I'm moving on because it looks terrible. And we don't give ourselves a chance to truly dive into it and try and fix it and experiment and say to ourselves, okay, well, if we're just going to throw this page out, what's the harm in taking it to the next step? Because I have found sometimes there are pages that I just think are the biggest hot mess I've ever done. And I just keep trying this. And then I think to myself, well, what if I use acrylic markers now? Right? And if you tell yourself, hey, it's already ruined, what do I have to lose? You would be amazed how you can take something from an ugly stage and bring it into something you really like and sometimes love. I have had pages that I hated until I absolutely loved them. Hope that makes sense. This jewel, it did not, even in the end, turn out the way I would have liked it to. It's okay. I would have liked it to have a little bit more depth. I could have maybe brought in like a lighter pink tone, but I really didn't want to introduce another color to the page. Now, as I'm doing this, you can see where I'm blending this out. You have to be really careful with this step. This is where you can get your bleed through. You want to make sure those layers are drying before you move on or before you keep adding. And that's the hard part because you want them wet to blend, but if they get too wet, they bleed. So it is the three little bears of it all, right? The Goldilocks and the three bears of it all. Finding that nice middle ground. This is just that blue, just adding it there to the center. And then going in with our yellow ochre. Now, for some of this, you may wonder, well, if you're going to put metallic, why don't you just put metallic? Some metallics are more transparent than others, and some metallics have, I don't know, it's like they look kind of dingy from one angle and then they look fantastic from the other. It's because of how the mica is in them. And I have found that oftentimes if you have something in the background behind it, it can change the look and make them more vibrant and help them kind of pop out more. So experiment with that as well. You'll notice that I do not add this yellow to all of the filigree. I just go in with the metallic. But the Lashlinka is very, very opaque and just does a fantastic job. Now, a couple of things I want to tell you about. Oh, I left this part in. I thought this blue would look good on those, and I did not like it. I didn't feel like it added anything to the paper. So what I did there is I took a little bit of water and I went over what I did and tried to kind of pick it up and remove it. And then in the end, I left it, and I'm just going to kind of go over it with the other color that I chose later on. But I wanted to leave that in to show you, that I make mistakes and that everything is about, do you like this here? And then changing it if you don't. Okay? Couple of things about watercolor metallics especially, and every brand is a little different. One of the mistakes I see people do is they do not wet their paint and allow it to truly soak in. So what I do is I add my water, I let it soak in a good 5 minutes, and then I go in before I use them again and I add water again, because now they're softened up. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to oversaturate them all at once and just get a ton of water there, and then it'll really dilute your paints. If you don't allow that soak in time, when you pick up your watercolor, it doesn't become this beautiful, like pigmented, rich color. It's going to look watery. Okay? If you don't water them enough, they will get blotchy and they don't flow on your paper. You can see how they're kind of flowing on here, right? And I'm not having to struggle to spread them anywhere. They are spreading just fine. Okay? So I want to make sure that people understand how to use them that way. That is probably one of the biggest mistakes I think new people make. But look at these colors. They're so rich. I am not sorry I bought these, but they are bougie. This is an investment. This is something that you save up for, maybe ask for your birthday, for Christmas. I don't know. And believe me, there were many, many times in my life when, birthday or not, they weren't on the budget. And that's okay. We all have cycles of life, and regular watercolor metallics will do this just fine, right? It does not have to be Lashlinka. In fact, I would say the whole bottom half is done with watercolors I made myself. One of which is made with Pearl X, I think, and then some I made with color changing ChromaFlow, or color changing chameleon pigment powders that I bought on Amazon. If you're interested in that, I'll try and remember to link that video in the description box, but it's relatively new. Now you see me dipping my brush into the water. It's because that paint is starting to get, like I said, like it wasn't spreading really well. If you're just going to do a little bit more, that's a fine solution, but I know at some point here, I am going to pick up the little dropper bottle and put a little more water on my paints. But here I'm just doing it just by dipping my brush, which is fine to do. Now, I always use distilled water when I use my watercolors. I just think you lessen your odds of introducing any sort of mold. And so I also use it in my rinse water, which I know a lot of people probably don't, but I feel like I'm rinsing my brush and then sticking it in. So, and you see, I use like a little shot glass, and I don't put very much water in there. And then that way, I can just keep replenishing it. Do you see how yummy that water looks though? Like, it looks like 14 karat gold. I love it so much. So this is the same color, and you can see there is a little bit of a color difference with putting it on the white paper versus not. Not enough that I'm worried about it. And you see how it's wet right there? And then when I touched my brush to it, it just dropped that color right in. Because water will flow to water. So where you have your water down is where, it's going to go. Actually, I think here, if I pay attention, I think I use 2 different colors of gold. So watch where I'm dipping. I actually filmed this in January, and I'm just now getting to the editing of it all. But here I'm using like that lighter gold, and then see how I dip down into that darker gold below it. I tend to do that just to add a little bit of variance to the color. Not enough that it's like wildly different and people are like, what was she even doing? But it's subtle. But those kind of things, it's kind of like when you color a flower, if you color it just one color, it's not quite as interesting as if you color it with 2, right? It just gives the eye something to appreciate. I have to say, I really enjoy using these watercolors quite a lot. Now, if this video interests you, I am going to take parts of this video and a couple of other pages where I've used some watercolor metallics and I took snippets out of them, and I'm going to put them together in like a video where I just talk about this part of like the using the metallics, as opposed to like this is more of a full color along for this whole page, right? So watch for that in upcoming videos. Here I added in the darker. The first one was the lighter. And you can actually even put on the lighter, and then in the areas where you want the darker, you can just drop it in. So that is one way as well. Here I'm adding the water. Now, sometimes you'll see me actually kind of holding my pinky out, and I'm not trying to be all, foo-foo-y. I'm just trying to keep from putting my hand into non-dry watercolor. What you don't see is I have actually stopped the video at times and allowed that to dry a little bit so that I'm not putting my hand in wet paint or metallic watercolor, i.e. paint. But if you see me later on in the video do that, that's essentially what I'm doing. But you can see you just kind of paint it on. Nothing fancy here. See, there I have my pinky because I'm trying to balance and not stick my hand in it. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I'm doing something similar here. I am using a lighter kind of pinky purple, right? Um, and then here I'm actually adding a little bit of the darker purple. Now I go back and forth and I do it both ways. Here I edit the dark purple first, and then I'm going in with the light purple now. If you do this while the two colors are wet, they do blend. So one might completely overcome the other one. You can see on this flower, I'm going in and I'm putting in the light first, and then I'm going to drop in the dark. Now, the choice is really yours how you want to do it, or if you even want to do this step at all, you could just simply paint them one color. But I am doing it that way, and by changing up the technique, I am going to get various amounts on each flower. So some are going to look lighter, Some are going to work darker, but they're going to have the same colors in them, so they will look like the same plant, right? But just like in real life, sometimes the petals are a little different color. And depending on how long you wait to add, you will get various degrees of blending or not. And depending on how much you add. If you don't want blending, you need to allow the paint to dry. I'm going to always call it paint. Apologies. I guess it's paint. Well, it's not. You need to allow the watercolor to dry. Do you see these petals aren't flowing? It needs more water. Okay? So whenever they're not flowy, you want to add more water. If they're too flowy, allow it to seep into the pan for a few minutes. But you can see the more, the thicker it gets, right? The less flowy it is, the less blendy you're going to get as well, because they're going to dry a little quicker. All things to just play around with and keep in mind when you're using these. Because once again, I am not saying they need to be super flowy. If you'd prefer to work with them more like this, that you can see how it's a little bit drier, then that's fine too. Okay? But if you feel like your paints are not shimmering as much, you're not allowing enough time for the water to soften them overall before you start using them. Okay? So I'm going to keep doing that with these flowers, and I'll be back. Okay, what I'm attempting to do is show you that I have now switched from the Lischlinka to a homemade gold. So this is one that I made with Pearl-Ex, and the gum. I made a watercolor binder because I made my homemade watercolors because, you know, squirrel. But it was a lot of fun. And if you're interested in that, there's several videos. There's making the binder, then there's making the watercolors, all of the things. So just look on the channel for that. But this is just so you can see that I got a good metallic just making my own, right? I don't know what I'm doing there. Who knows what I'm doing? Probably just messing around with the watercolor. But anyway, I'm going to use that on all the stamens, and then I'm going to do like the dots and the stars as well. So I'll be back. Okay, so that is my palette there on the left of all of the homemade watercolors that I did. And this was a blue one. Honestly, I don't even know. But if I remember right, it has like a blue, maybe a Pearl-Ex. It might just be the plain mica because I had some plain mica. And then I also added some glitter to it. But I just felt like even though this one in particular is not nearly as that shimmery, glittery as the Shilinka, I actually preferred that because I wanted it to be metallic, and yet if everything is shimmery and shiny, you don't get quite the same effect as you do if some things are more subtle, right? It's like if every part of your page is loud and bold, your eye doesn't really know where to look. So it's often good to kind of rein yourself back in. I could have left these uncolored right? And just had them be pencil. And that would have been fine too. But I felt like this was a nice compromise because this is more the shimmer like you would get with a wink of Stella. You know, that subtle shimmer, not the Lishlinka glitter. Does that make sense? And here I'm going in with a little bit of a different color, I think. No, maybe not. I can't tell. Yeah, I think it is a little bit of a different color. Yeah, see, I'm going in with a more turquoisey kind of color here. And that also will add a little bit of interest. So I will leave you to that, and then I'll be back in a bit. And if you're wondering why that watercolor has like a big crack and a hole in it, it's because when I filled it, it got an air bubble underneath it, and I didn't like settle the paint down. And so then the top layer dried hard with that air bubble underneath. So lessons learned. Here I'm just going in with 2 different colors for this gemstone, right? Like this pinky purple for in the middle, and then more of the purpley purple on the outside. And then I just try to blend them ever so slightly where they meet, right? Just kind of bringing that in just so that I don't have a super harsh line there. And then I'm going to bring in a dark gold for around the little edge of the pendant, just for some variance of color. So you can see it doesn't have to be Schlinke watercolor. You can do this with any of your metallic watercolors, right? So here I'm just kind of going all around where those little openings were. And I decided to do it in this pinky color. I considered gold, and that might have looked really good too. But I did do the pink, and unfortunately I think I cut off. I thought I had clicked on the record and I must have hit it twice, because it didn't record me doing this on the left-hand side of the page. So apologies. But really, you get the idea. I mean, it's a repetition over and over. So here I'm bringing in a Polychromos colored pencil, and I am just simply smoothing out the blend, right? Just adding a little bit of softening there, just to smooth it out, which, you know, I think is what's so amazing about those Zig brush pens, is you can lay down your color quickly and then go in with a colored pencil and smooth them out. So in the background on this page, I used Lafranc Flash. It is an emulsion vinyl paint. It is super matte, and I think that part turned out really lovely. This part was a hot mess. As you can see, what happened was when I was coloring the background, I forgot that I wasn't going to be coloring this part and colored that part. And then I had to try and cover the black with white. And y'all know how well that goes, right? And so that was 14 different attempts to get that covered. And then it started getting kind of lumpy, and oh, it was a mess. But you know what? You can't, what's that phrase? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I like how the rest of the page turned out. I really do wish you could see just how sparkly and shiny it is. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you'd like even more Jazzy Doodle and a little more snark, please check out the membership below. If you're looking for a community where you can share your work and chat with other fellow colorists in a safe and welcoming environment, hit the subscribe button to Jazzydoodledesigns and then look for Jazzydoodledesigns Coloring Community on Facebook. And there you can join a group of fellow colorists to talk all things coloring and share cute pet pictures. I hope to see you there. And until next time, happy coloring.